My toxic best friend convinced everyone I was threatening her life, so I blew up her lies and cut her out completely. A year later, she's back online, quietly trying to turn people against me again. Awif was my best friend for a month straight. She was loud, funny, and her mom was the best. Whenever I left school, Awif's mom would always wave at me while smiling. It was a really good feeling, because my parents were workaholics who were basically absent in my life. So even though Awif was known for not being able to hold down a friend for longer than a month, I loved her. All our clothes were free reign for each other, and all her enemies were mine too. So that's how I met the most deranged girl I'd ever encountered called Mia. Awif didn't give me much detail, just told me Mia was a beach. So that was enough for me. Soon we were making fake accounts on Instagram and messaging asking to be her friend. At first it was really funny. She had no idea it was me, and she was even FaceTiming Awif about how weird Holly, the fake account, was. It wasn't long before Mia figured it out and blocked us both. Lol. So 2 weeks later, I found out why I was Awif's only friend. We were on a school trip when she spread rumors about me for literally no reason. She said I had tried to kiss every boy in the class, but they had all rejected me. I should have seen it coming, but 14-year-old me was so naive. So instead of getting revenge, I got depressed. That whole summer was the worst period of my life. I could barely get out of bed in the morning, and my only joy was found in making those mood boards on Tumblr. During that time is when I somehow started talking to Mia. We had just one thing in common. We both hated Awif. We'd literally text almost every day just to talk shit about her, and it was invigorating every single time. So after 2 years of constant gossiping, I finally took the train to see her. The first thing I noticed was that she looked nothing like her Instagram. Not even trying to be mean, I genuinely didn't know it was her when she opened the door, but I looked past it because I knew what it felt like to be insecure as heck. Mia was the one who got me into cigarettes, and whenever we met up, we would play GTA or talk about our shitty exes together. We were the stereotypical 16-year-old duo until CVID hit. Every day she was posting on her Snapchat private story about how little she was eating, how she had gotten a special high-caloric drink from the doctors but wasn't drinking it, how she was eating literally nothing every single day. It worried me a lot, and we'd even have fights where I tried to get her to eat, where I tried to tell her that control didn't have to be found in starvation. I even sent her those Eat With Me TikToks to remind her that eating is something that is necessary and not weird or bad. Meanwhile, I was going through the worst time of my life. My granddad had suddenly passed, and I myself was eating so little that I could barely walk without feeling extreme pain in my calves. But whenever I tried to talk about myself, she would either leave me undelivered or shift the conversation back to her problems. So I just let myself be her therapist, because it was better than being alone. But then I noticed the cracks in her story. When school started again, she was posting herself in her uniform and talking about how much she was dreading it. The weird part was that she told me she hadn't eaten in days. Whenever I tell people this story, they always say, "Oh, but you can still function when you don't eat blah blah." No, if you are starving for weeks on end, with zero food, you will not be able to go to school and act normally. But I was just a 16-year-old who wanted to believe my friends could do no wrong. So I never questioned her, and that's when our friendship ended over a pair of AirPods. You see, my friend Liam had gone to Mia's house with me before CVID and left his AirPods behind. So by this point, months later, he was practically itching for them back. He even offered to stand outside her house and she could throw it outside her bedroom window. And when Mia refused with the excuse of being too busy, even I started getting suspicious. And Liam was the opposite of me. He was assertive and not afraid to step on people's toes. So one day, he asked me if I could go to her house with him to get the AirPods. At this point, he was the only one who didn't treat me like a piece of shit stuck on the bottom of their shoe. So I caved. On the way there, I texted Mia saying me and Liam were coming to collect the AirPods. Suddenly my phone was buzzing with a wall of excuses. I'm at my aunt's house. My bedroom door is locked from the outside. Leave me alone, were all messages she actually sent. I started crying and begging Liam to turn back and get them another time, but he wasn't budging. That's how he ended up at Mia's front door, asking his sister to get the AirPods for him. Lo and behold, the room was unlocked, and he got his AirPods back. There were scratches all over them, and they had earwax he didn't recognize. That's when I finally realized she was a lying beach, and I blocked her. But the next day, I was once again faced with the reality of how naive I truly was. Because unlike Awif, Mia wasn't going down without a fight, and soon my life was turned upside down in ways I couldn't have imagined. That night after blocking her, I slept fitfully, waking frequently to check my phone for notifications that weren't there. The silence from her end was almost more unsettling than an angry response would have been. I kept expecting something, a text from an unknown number, a message request, anything. But the quiet stretched on, building a false sense of security that would soon be shattered. One Friday afternoon, Mia was waiting for me at the school gates, her figure unmistakable even from a distance. I froze, unsure what to do, my heart hammering against my ribs. Even though her power had diminished, the sight of her still made my stomach knot with dread. "We need to talk," she said, her voice eerily calm, lacking the warmth it once held during our late-night calls. Alone, she stood with her weight shifted to one hip, arms crossed over her chest, the afternoon sun casting harsh shadows across her face. She wore the same black hoodie I'd seen in countless selfies, but in person it looked worn and faded, the fabric pilling at the elbows. Students streamed past us, some slowing to watch the confrontation unfold, their curious glances adding to my discomfort as I stood rooted to the spot, backpack hanging heavily from one shoulder. I glanced around for Liam, scanning the crowd of departing students, but he was nowhere to be seen. "I don't think that's a good idea," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tremor I felt in my hands. She stepped closer, the scent of her familiar vanilla perfume making me dizzy with unwanted nostalgia. "I just want to apologize for everything." Her eyes looked sincere, but I'd seen this act before, the same look she'd given me when explaining why she couldn't return Liam's AirPods. The space between us seemed charged with tension, the few feet separating us feeling feeling both too close and impossibly vast. Behind her, I could see other students watching, some pretending not to while others openly stared, the drama unfolding like a scene from a movie they couldn't look away from. A cool breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree near the gate, the ordinary sound somehow heightening the surreal quality of the moment. "You can apologize right here," I replied, keeping my distance, suddenly aware of how many people were watching our exchange. Her face hardened, the mask slipping for just a second to reveal the cold calculation beneath. "Fine, have it your way." She turned and walked away, but not before adding, "Tell your parents I said hi." The threat was subtle but clear, sending ice through my veins. The implication hung in the air long after she disappeared from view, her words echoing in my mind as I stood frozen in place. The school grounds gradually emptied around me, the excited chatter of students heading home fading until I was left alone with the distant sound of traffic and my own racing thoughts. The metal gate felt cool against my palm as I finally forced myself to move, legs unsteady as I began the walk home. I hurried home, anxiety building with each step, my mind racing through all the possible ways she could make good on her implied threat. When I arrived, my mom was on the phone, her expression darkening as she listened to whoever was on the other end, her free hand clutching the counter so tightly her knuckles were white. "Yes, I understand. We'll look into it immediately," she said before hanging up, a rare appearance in the middle of her workday. The kitchen smelled of coffee and disuse, the countertops spotless from lack of cooking rather than regular cleaning. My mother's business suit looked out of place in our kitchen, her professional demeanor at odds with the family photos magneted to the refrigerator, snapshots of happier times that felt increasingly distant. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, illuminating dust particles floating in the air between us, the silence heavy with unspoken tension. "Who was that?" I asked, already dreading the answer, my backpack slipping from my shoulder to the floor. "Mia's mother." My mom's voice was tight, strained in a way I rarely heard. "She says you've been sending threatening messages to Mia from a burner account." "What? That's ridiculous." I pulled out my phone, hands shaking. "I haven't contacted her at all. I blocked her yesterday." The accusation hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My phone felt slippery in my sweaty palms as I frantically scrolled through my message history, searching for evidence to defend myself. The kitchen suddenly seemed too bright, too exposed, as if Mia could somehow see me through the windows, watching my panic with satisfaction from some hidden vantage point. My mom showed me screenshots Mia's mother had sent her. There were messages threatening to expose Mia and make her pay. All things I'd never say, but they were made to look like they came from me, the fabricated evidence so convincing it made my stomach drop. "These aren't from me," I insisted, my voice rising with desperation. "Mia's making fake accounts again, just like she did with those edited screenshots she sent around last week." The messages were displayed on my mother's phone, the blue text bubbles containing words I would never use, threats I would never make. The timestamps showed they had been sent late last night, during hours when my phone had been charging across my bedroom, untouched. Yet there was my name, my profile picture, attached to these vicious messages that seemed designed to paint me as unstable and dangerous. My parents exchanged looks, doubt clouding their features. After what had happened with the school, they were less quick to believe Mia, but uncertainty lingered in their eyes. "We believe you," my dad said, appearing from his home office for the first time in days. "But this girl seems determined to cause problems." My father looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered, his reading glasses perched on top of his head where he'd pushed them in his hurry to join the conversation. His presence was both comforting and strange, the familiar scent of his cologne mixing with the tension in the room, his rarely seen concerned expression reminding me of how serious the situation had become. That night, I called Liam and told him what happened, the words tumbling out between shaky breaths. "She's getting desperate," he said, his voice a comforting anchor in my storm of anxiety. "But we need to be careful. Save everything. Document all contact with her. Don't delete anything, even if it's upsetting." My bedroom felt like the only safe space left, the door firmly closed against the outside world. I sat cross-legged on my bed, phone pressed to my ear, the fairy light strung above my headboard casting a soft glow that couldn't quite dispel the darkness of the situation. Liam's voice through the speaker was steady and reassuring, a contrast to my own trembling words as I recounted every detail of the day's events. When I woke up the next day, I found a barrage of texts from unknown numbers, each one more vicious than the last. "Leave Mia alone," one read. "Everyone knows you're obsessed with her," said another. "Get help, psycho," a third demanded. I realized with horror that Mia had somehow gotten people to believe I was harassing her again, her web of manipulation extending far beyond our former friendship circle. The morning light filtering through my curtains seemed too cheerful for the dread pooling in my stomach as I scrolled through the messages. Each notification brought a fresh wave of anxiety, my thumb hovering over the screen as I debated whether to read or delete without opening. Some numbers I recognized as belonging to people from school, others were completely unknown, but all carried the same accusatory tone, the same twisted version of events that cast me as the villain. At school on Monday, the atmosphere had shifted, not as bad as before, but I could feel eyes on me, whispers following me down the hallway like persistent shadows. "Don't let it get to you," Liam said, walking beside me, his presence a shield against the stairs. "Mia's just trying to regain control. It's what she does." The hallways seemed narrower than usual, the fluorescent lights overhead harsh and unforgiving. Every locker slam made me jump, every burst of laughter from a group of students making me wonder if I was the subject of their amusement. The familiar school environment had transformed into hostile territory, the routine of changing classes now a gauntlet to be run between safe spaces where friendly faces could be found. But it was getting to me, seeping into my skin like poison. I'd thought this nightmare was over, but Mia was relentless, her determination to destroy me seemingly boundless. During lunch, I noticed a group of girls I didn't recognize staring at me from across the cafeteria, their hostile glares making me shrink in my seat. When I looked their way, they didn't even pretend not to be talking about me, one of them pointing openly in my direction. The cafeteria's usual cacophony of voices and clattering trays seemed to fade into the background, my focus narrowing to those unfamiliar faces and their undisguised contempt. My appetite vanished instantly, the sandwich I'd packed sitting untouched on the table before me. The plastic chair felt uncomfortable beneath me, me, the distance to the exit suddenly seeming impossibly far, as if I were trapped in a fishbowl with everyone watching my every move. Who are they? I asked Liam, pushing my untouched food around my plate. Friends of Mia from her dance class, he explained, his voice low. She's been recruiting people outside school to back up her stories, creating her own army. After school, one of those girls, tall with sleek black hair and perfectly winged eyeliner, approached me in the parking lot, her steps purposeful. You need to back off, she said, her voice carrying enough for nearby students to hear. Mia told us everything. The girl moved with practiced confidence, her posture perfect as she blocked my path to the bus. Up close, I could see the expensive brand logo on her jacket, the gleam of real gold in her earrings catching the afternoon sunlight. She smelled of expensive perfume, her makeup flawlessly applied in a way that spoke of hours of practice and YouTube tutorials. Everything about her exuded the kind of effortless privilege that made my thrift store clothes and drugstore makeup feel suddenly inadequate. Whatever she told you is a lie, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the heat rising to my face. The girl smirked, looking me up and down with undisguised contempt. She showed us the messages you sent her. Pretty psycho stuff. Those aren't from me, I insisted, clutching my backpack straps tightly. Mia faked them. She's done this before. My voice sounded small even to my own ears, drowned out by the rumble of school buses and the chatter of students eager to head home. A small crowd had gathered at a safe distance, watching our confrontation with undisguised interest, some openly filming with their phones. The asphalt beneath my feet seemed to waver slightly, the stress of the moment making me lightheaded as I struggled to maintain my composure under the weight of so many judgmental gazes. Right, she said sarcastically, flipping her hair over her shoulder, just like you didn't steal from her either. As she walked away, I felt the ground shifting beneath me again, the fragile stability I'd been building crumbling away. How was Mia still able to convince people of her lies? The accusation hung in the air like poison, spreading to the watching crowd through whispers and significant looks. Theft was a new allegation, one I hadn't heard before, and the casual way she'd thrown it out suggested there were other stories circulating that hadn't reached me yet. The realization that Mia's campaign against me was evolving, growing more elaborate with each retelling, sent a chill down my spine despite the warm spring afternoon. That evening, I received an email from an account I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "I know the truth about Mia." Inside was a single line, "Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street tomorrow at 4 p.m. if you want proof." My finger hovered over the delete button. It could easily be another of Mia's traps, but curiosity won out. The email arrived while I was attempting to focus on homework, the notification breaking my already fragile concentration. The sender's address was a jumble of numbers and letters, offering no clues about its origin. The mysterious message glowed on my screen in the growing darkness of my bedroom, the only light source as evening settled outside my window. I read and reread the cryptic invitation, analyzing each word for hidden meanings or traps, weighing the risk against my desperate need for allies. I showed Liam the email the next day, the two of us huddled in the corner of the library during free period. It could be a trap, he warned, his brow furrowed with concern. Mia might be trying to lure you somewhere, or it could be someone else she's manipulated, I countered, hope flickering despite my better judgment. Someone who's finally seen through her. The library was quiet, except for the occasional turning of pages and the distant hum of the air conditioning. We sat at a table partially hidden by tall bookshelves, our voices barely above whispers as we debated the mysterious email. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, dust motes dancing in the golden beams that fell across the worn wooden table between us. The familiar smell of old books and floor polish created an atmosphere of normalcy that felt at odds with the conspiracy we were discussing. We decided to go together. Safety in numbers our only defense against whatever might await us. The coffee shop was busy when we arrived, the hum of conversation and espresso machines creating a comforting background noise. We ordered drinks and found a table with a clear view of the door, my eyes darting to every person who entered. The coffee shop was one of those trendy independent places with exposed brick walls and mismatched vintage furniture. The afternoon crowd was a mix of students with laptops and professionals having late meetings, the buzz of conversation providing welcome anonymity. Our table was near the back, giving us a strategic view of both the entrance and the emergency exit. Liam's suggestion that betrayed how seriously he was taking the situation. My hot chocolate sat untouched before me, the whipped cream slowly melting as my anxiety made it impossible to enjoy. At exactly 4 p.m., a girl with copper red hair walked in, her searching gaze sweeping the room. She looked around nervously before spotting us and making her way over, clutching her bag tightly against her side. "Are you the one who emailed me?" I asked as she sat down, the chair scraping against the floor. She nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "My name's Elena. I was Mia's best friend last year." Elena was thin and pale, with freckles scattered across her nose and cheeks like constellations. She wore an oversized sweater despite the warm weather, her frame seeming to disappear within its folds. Her movements were cautious, almost furtive, her eyes constantly darting to the door as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady, carrying the weight of someone who had rehearsed what they needed to say many times. My eyes widened, recognition dawning. "She never mentioned you." "I'm not surprised," Elena said with a bitter smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She likes to erase people who know too much about her." Elena told us how Mia had done the same thing to her, accused her of stealing, turned friends against her, even contacted her parents with fake evidence. But Elena had been smarter than me. She'd started documenting things early, saving screenshots of original messages before Mia could alter them, recording phone calls when Mia's behavior became erratic. As Elena spoke, her initial nervousness gave way to a quiet determination, her hands becoming more more animated as she detailed the systematic way Mia had isolated and then attacked her. The coffee shop continued its normal bustle around us, the mundane backdrop of people enjoying their drinks and conversations creating a surreal contrast to the disturbing story unfolding at our table. Outside, the afternoon light began to fade, shadows lengthening across the floor as Elena continued her account, each revelation making my stomach twist with a mix of validation and dread. She didn't have video confessions or dramatic smoking GNs, but she had something almost as valuable, a pattern of behavior documented over months. "Why are you showing us this now?" Liam asked, his skepticism evident in his tone. Elena's eyes filled with tears, her fingers tracing the rim of her untouched coffee cup. "Because I saw it happening to you, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. I was too scared before, but seeing her do it again." She pushed a USB drive across the table. "Everything's on here. Use it however you need to." The small black drive sat between us like a lifeline, its plastic casing scratched from being carried in Elena's bag. The weight of what it contained, evidence of months of manipulation and lies, seemed disproportionate to its tiny size. Elena wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater, the gesture childlike and vulnerable, reminding me that despite the adult nature of what we were discussing, we were all still just teenagers trying to navigate a situation none of us should have had to face. As Elena left, I felt a mix of vindication and dread. We had more evidence now, but Mia's pattern was clear. She wouldn't stop until she'd completely ruined me, her obsession with control driving her to increasingly desperate measures. The next day, things escalated further. Someone had created a fake social media profile using my name and photos. The account was posting horrible things, raxed comments, bullying messages to other students, even inappropriate photos that had been clearly photoshopped with my face, the crude editing obvious to anyone looking closely but convincing enough at first glance. I discovered the fake account during first period when my phone kept buzzing with notifications from people I barely knew, asking why I was saying such terrible things online. The profile used my yearbook photo as its avatar, my full name prominently displayed, but the content was vile, hateful slurs and threatening messages that made my blood run cold. The photoshopped images were the worst part, my face crudely pasted onto revealing photos, the poor quality editing not immediately obvious to casual viewers scrolling quickly through their feeds. I was called to the principal's office, where a concerned-looking Ms. Parker was waiting with printouts of the posts spread across her desk, like evidence at a trial. "These are being attributed to you," she said, her voice measured but serious. "Several parents have called to complain." "It's not me," I said desperately, my voice cracking. "Someone's pretending to be me. It has to be Mia. Please, you have to believe me." Ms. Parker's office was uncomfortably warm, the heating system working overtime against the spring chill outside. The walls were lined with framed diplomas and student artwork, attempts at creating a welcoming environment that failed to soften the gravity of the situation. The leather chair beneath me creaked as I shifted anxiously, the sound seeming unnaturally loud in the tense silence that followed my plea. Through the window behind Ms. Parker, I could see students crossing the courtyard between classes, their normal day continuing while mine imploded. Ms. Parker sighed, removing her glasses to rub the bridge of her nose. "We're investigating, but in the meantime, I suggest you be very careful about your online presence." When I left the office, Liam was waiting, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. "What happened?" he asked, falling into step beside me. I explained about the fake profile, each word tasting bitter on my tongue. His face darkened, jaw clenching. "This has gone too far. We need to use what Elena gave us." The hallway was mostly empty, classes having already started, our voices echoing slightly against the rows of lockers. Liam's expression was thunderous, a muscle working in his jaw as he processed what I'd told him. His protective anger was both comforting and frightening. Comforting to have someone so firmly on my side, but frightening to see how serious the situation had become to provoke such a reaction from someone usually so measured. We spent that evening going through Elena's files, huddled over my laptop at my kitchen table. There was so much evidence of Mia's manipulation, not just with Elena, but with others too. Text messages where Mia admitted to making things up, for fun. Screenshots of her bragging to another friend about how easily people believed her stories. Audio of a phone call where she threatened Elena when she tried to distance herself. The kitchen light cast harsh shadows across our faces as we scrolled through file after file, the evidence mounting with each new document we opened. Outside, darkness had fallen completely, the windows reflecting our hunched figures back at us like we were being watched. My parents moved quietly around us, bringing us snacks and drinks without interrupting, their concerned glances exchanged over our heads. The clock on the microwave blinked past midnight as we continued our investigation, the house settling into nighttime creaks and groans around us. Most revealing was a voice memo Elena had recorded during a conversation where Mia casually mentioned making up rumors about me, laughing about how gullible everyone was. "We need to show this to everyone," I said, anger finally overtaking my fear. Liam nodded, his expression grim. "But we have to be smart about it. If we just post it online, Mia will claim it's fake, and it'll become a he said she said situation." Mia's voice in the recording was chilling in its casualness, the way she discussed destroying someone's reputation with the same tone someone might use to discuss weekend plans. Hearing her laugh about the rumors she'd spread about me, rumors that had caused me weeks of misery, ignited something in me that burned away the last traces of fear. The kitchen suddenly felt too small to contain my anger, my hands clenching into fists as I fought the urge to slam them down on the table. We decided to approach Ms. Parker first thing the next morning, gathering the most compelling evidence onto a separate drive. She watched the files in silence, her expression growing increasingly troubled as the pattern of behavior became undeniable. "This is very serious," she said, closing her laptop with a decisive click. "Cyberbullying, defamation, harassment, these are potentially legal matters. I need to consult with the school board about next steps." Ms. Parker's office looked different in the morning light, less intimidating than it had the day before. She listened without interruption as we presented our evidence, her professional demeanor giving way to genuine concern as the extent of Mia's behavior became clear. The wall clock ticked loudly in the moments of silence between our explanations, marking the passing of time that suddenly seemed to be moving in our favor, rather than against us. As we left her office, I felt a glimmer of hope breaking through the dark cloud that had been hanging over me. Maybe this nightmare would finally end, the truth cutting through Mia's web of lies. But Mia wasn't done yet. Somehow, she found out we'd gone to the principal, perhaps through one of her many informants scattered throughout the school. That afternoon, as I was walking to my last class, I felt someone grab my arm and pull me into an empty classroom, the door slamming shut behind us. The classroom was dark, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun, creating an eerie half-light that made the familiar space seem alien and threatening. The desks cast long shadows across the floor, the whiteboard reflecting what little light filtered through the blinds. The sudden transition from the bright, busy hallway to this dim, silent room was disorienting, my eyes struggling to adjust as I tried to make sense of what was happening. It was Mia, her face contorted with rage, all pretense of the sweet, vulnerable girl she portrayed to others completely gone. "What did you show her?" she demanded, her fingers digging into my arm. I pulled away from her grip, finding strength I didn't know I had. The truth. Recordings of you admitting you made everything up. Up close, Mia looked different than I remembered. Thinner, with dark circles under her eyes that her carefully applied makeup couldn't quite conceal. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail that emphasized the sharpness of her features, the controlled image she presented to the world showing signs of strain around the edges. Her breathing was rapid, shallow, her composure cracking under the weight of her own lies. For a moment, real fear flashed across her face, her carefully constructed world threatening to collapse. Then she composed herself, the mask sliding back into place. "No one will believe it. I'll say it was a joke, that I was just playing along with what you wanted me to say. It won't work this time," I said, finding courage I didn't know I had. "There's too much evidence. Elena gave us everything." The mention of Elena's name hung in the air between us, its impact visible in the way Mia's eyes widened, her confident facade faltering for a crucial moment. The classroom felt charged with tension, the air thick with unspoken threats, and the weight of months of manipulation finally being exposed. Outside in the hallway, the final bell rang, the sound muffled through the closed door, but marking the beginning of the end of this confrontation. At the mention of Elena's name, Mia went pale, her confident facade cracking. "Elena contacted you? She showed us everything, Mia. It's over." Mia's expression changed, calculating even in her panic. "You think you've won? This isn't even close to over. By tomorrow, everyone in this school will think you're the biggest psycho they've ever met." She stormed out, leaving me shaking but somehow stronger than before. The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows, the sound echoing in the empty classroom. I stood alone in the semi-darkness, my heart racing but my mind surprisingly clear. The threat in Mia's words was unmistakable, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel paralyzed by fear. Something had shifted inside me during our confrontation, a realization that Mia's power existed largely because I had allowed it to, my own fear feeding her confidence. I immediately texted Liam about the encounter, and he met me after class, his worried eyes scanning my face. "We need to be prepared for whatever she's planning," he said, walking me to my locker. "She's cornered now, which makes her dangerous." That night, I couldn't sleep, every creak in the house making me start. Every notification on my phone made me jump, my nerves frayed to breaking point. What was Mia planning? How much worse could this get? My bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt exposed and vulnerable. I checked my window locks twice, pulled my curtains tight against the darkness outside, and still couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My phone sat on my nightstand, screen down but impossible to ignore, each potential notification representing another attack in Mia's campaign against me. The digital clock on my dresser marked the passing hours as I tossed and turned, rehearsing responses to whatever new accusations might await me in the morning. I got my answer the next morning. When I arrived at school, there was a crowd gathered around my locker, the buzz of excited whispers filling the hallway. As I approached, people turned to stare at me, some with disgust, others with what looked like fear. My locker had been broken into, the metal door hanging open. Inside, someone had placed dozens of printed photos of Mia, her face crossed out with red marker, threatening words scrawled across them in handwriting that looked deliberately similar to mine. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly as I approached my locker, each step bringing me closer to the center of attention I'd been dreading. The crowd parted slightly as I approached, creating a path that felt like walking to the gallows. The photos were arranged with disturbing care, plastered not just inside my locker but spilling out onto the door and surrounding wall, creating a collage of manufactured obsession. The red marker used to deface Mia's images was still uncapped, placed deliberately on the shelf of my locker like a signature left at a crime scene. There were also printed screenshots of disturbing messages supposedly from me to Mia, detailing how I wanted to hurt her, each one more graphic than the last. "I didn't do this," I said, my voice barely audible as a teacher pushed through the crowd, the students parting reluctantly. Mr. Ross, the vice principal, looked at the display with a grim expression, his bushy eyebrows drawn together. "Come with me," he said, his hand on my shoulder steering me away from the growing spectacle. The messages contained threats I would never make, violent fantasies described in language I would never use. Some students had their phones out, documenting the scene, ensuring that Mia's fabricated evidence would spread beyond those physically present. Mr. Ross's hand on my shoulder was firm, but not unkind as he guided me through the whispering crowd, his imposing presence creating a buffer between me and the worst of the stares and comments. In his office, I tried to explain that Mia had staged the whole thing, but my words sounded hollow even to me. How could I prove I hadn't done this? The evidence was literally in my locker, planted there overnight by someone who clearly wanted to destroy me. We take threats of violence very seriously, Mr. Ross said, his voice grave. I'm going to have to call your parents and the police. Mr. Ross's office was smaller than Ms. Parker's, more utilitarian with filing cabinets instead of artwork, the space reflecting his no-nonsense approach. His desk was neat but crowded with paperwork. A family photo turned to face him rather than visitors. The gravity of his words, the police, made the room seem to shrink around me, the walls closing in as I struggled to find words that would convince him of my innocence. My world collapsed around me, the walls of the office seeming to close in. The police? This couldn't be happening. Just as Mr. Ross reached for his phone, there was a commotion outside, and Liam burst into the office, ignoring Mr. Ross's protests. You need to see this, he said, thrusting his phone forward. On it was footage from his friend Marcus in the AV club, not official security footage, which would have required formal requests, but a clip from Marcus's phone. Liam's entrance was like a gust of fresh air in the stifling atmosphere of the office, his determined expression a stark contrast to my own defeated one. His normally neat appearance was disheveled, as if he'd run across the school to reach us in time, his hair falling across his forehead, and his uniform shirt partially untucked. The phone in his outstretched hand trembled slightly with the urgency of his mission, the screen's glow illuminating his face in the dimly lit office. He'd been at school early for yearbook committee and had seen Mia near my locker, acting suspiciously. Sensing trouble, he'd recorded her planting the materials and breaking in, the video grainy but unmistakable. Mr. Ross stared at the video, then at me, his expression shifting from stern to concerned. Where did you get this? My friend Marcus is in AV club and was here early setting up for the morning announcements, Liam explained, the partial truth flowing easily. When he heard what happened, he showed me what he'd recorded. The video showed Mia clearly, her distinctive jacket and backpack visible as she worked quickly at my locker, occasionally glancing over her shoulder to check if anyone was watching. The timestamp in the corner confirmed it had been taken early that morning, well before most students arrived. Though the quality wasn't perfect, there was no mistaking her methodical movements as she arranged the photos and planted the evidence, her face occasionally visible in profile as she worked. The relief was overwhelming, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. Mr. Ross called Miss Parker, and soon I was moved to her office while they reviewed the footage and discussed what to do, the adults speaking in hushed tones just outside the door. I'm so sorry about this, Miss Parker said when she returned, genuine regret in her eyes. We should have taken more decisive action earlier. Miss Parker's apology seemed to release something that had been wound tight inside me for weeks, the validation of finally being believed by an authority figure bringing tears to my eyes that I quickly blinked away. The morning sunlight streamed through her office window, warming my face as I sat in the now familiar chair across from her desk, the atmosphere completely different from my previous visits. On her desk, I noticed she had already started drafting an email to the school board, the subject line visible, urgent, disciplinary matter. By the end of the day, Mia had been suspended indefinitely pending a disciplinary hearing, the news spreading through the school like wildfire. The police weren't called, but Ms. Parker suggested my parents might want to consider a restraining order, the gravity of the situation finally penetrating their workaholic bubble. I thought it was finally over, the nightmare coming to an end at last. The hallways felt different as I walked to my final class that day. The whispers now centered on Mia rather than me, the tide of public opinion beginning its inevitable shift. Some students who had been openly hostile now avoided eye contact, embarrassed by their quick judgment. Others approached with awkward apologies, admitting they should have questioned what they were told. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for weeks seemed to lighten slightly with each step, each breath coming easier than the last. But that evening, as I was walking home, a car pulled up beside me, the engine's purr making me jump. Mia's older brother Kyle was driving, with Mia in the passenger seat, her face pale and drawn. Get in, Kyle said, his voice neither friendly nor threatening. Mia wants to talk. No way, I replied, backing away, my heart racing. Mia leaned across her brother, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Please, she said, and for once she sounded genuinely desperate, stripped of her usual manipulation tactics. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. The car was a dark blue sedan, unremarkable except for the dent in the passenger door that I remembered from previous encounters. Kyle looked tired, his resemblance to Mia stronger in the fading light, both siblings sharing the same sharp features and intense gaze. The street was quiet, most people still at work or school activities, no witnesses to this unexpected confrontation. A dog barked in the distance, the ordinary sound emphasizing the surreal quality of the moment. Against my better judgment, curiosity and a strange sense of closure pushing me forward, I got in the back seat. Kyle drove us to a nearby park, and then left us alone on a bench, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. I'm sorry, Mia said after a long silence, her voice small, for everything. I stared at her, searching for signs of manipulation, the practiced sincerity I'd seen so many times before. Why should I believe you? The park was nearly empty, just a mother with a toddler at the distant playground, and an elderly man walking a small dog along the perimeter path. The bench was positioned under an old oak tree, its new spring leaves creating a dappled pattern of sunlight and shadow that shifted with the gentle breeze. Mia sat with her shoulders hunched, her usual confident posture abandoned, making her seem smaller and younger than I remembered. You shouldn't, she admitted, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. I've given you no reason to, but I'm being sent away, to live with my dad in another state. The school called my mom, and she can't deal with me anymore. I felt nothing but exhaustion, the emotional roller coaster of the past weeks leaving me drained. What do you want from me, Mia? I want you to understand, she said, her voice breaking. I've been seeing a therapist since Since what happened with Elena, my mom made me go. They say I have issues with abandonment and control. As she spoke, a leaf drifted down from the tree above, landing between us on the bench, a small natural interruption to the heavy conversation. Mia's admissions seemed to cost her something, each word coming with difficulty. Her usual fluid manipulation replaced by halting sincerity. Her hands trembled slightly as she continued to pick at the thread, unraveling it further with each nervous tug, a physical manifestation of her unraveling control. That doesn't excuse what you did, I said, the words coming out sharper than intended. I know. She wiped at her eyes, mascara smudging beneath her fingers. But when you blocked me, after everything with the AirPods, it felt like everyone was leaving me again, and I couldn't handle it. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think she was finally taking responsibility, but I'd been fooled too many times, trust broken beyond repair. I hope you get the help you need, I said, standing up, brushing invisible dirt from my jeans. But I can't be part of your life anymore. The setting sun cast an orange glow across the park, lengthening shadows and softening edges in a way that made everything look slightly unreal. As I stood, my shadow stretched long across the grass, reaching toward the playground where the mother was now gathering her child to leave. The finality of my words hung in the air between us, marking the end of a chapter that had consumed so much of my life. As I walked away, she called after me, her voice carrying across the empty park. They're making me delete all my social media accounts. You won't have to worry about me anymore. I didn't look back, my steps carrying me forward into whatever came next. The next few weeks were strangely quiet, the absence of drama almost disorienting after so much chaos. Mia was gone, transferred to a school near her father's home according to the rumors that still circulated. The fake profiles disappeared, and gradually, the whispers about me faded, new school drama taking its place. The path through the park led me toward home, each step feeling lighter than the last, as if I were physically walking away from the weight of the past months. Birds called to each other in the trees overhead, ordinary sounds that somehow emphasized how extraordinary the situation had been. By the time I reached the park exit, Mia was no longer visible behind me, our final conversation already beginning to feel like something that had happened to someone else, a story I might tell someday when it no longer had the power to hurt. My parents, shaken by how close I'd come to serious trouble, started making more of an effort to be present. My mom even took a day off work to go shopping with me, something we hadn't done in years, the simple act of browsing stores together feeling like a revelation. We've been terrible parents, she admitted as we sat in a cafe, the confession surprising me. Always working, never really seeing what was happening in your life. The shopping mall was crowded with weekend shoppers, the normality of the scene a stark contrast to the drama of recent weeks. My mother looked different outside her usual business attire, more approachable in jeans and a casual sweater, her hair loose instead of in its usual tight bun. The cafe was noisy with conversation and the hiss of espresso machines, our table a small island of intimacy in the public space. Between us sat shopping bags containing clothes we'd picked out together, tangible evidence of a day spent reconnecting. You're not terrible, I said, surprised by how much I meant it despite years of resentment. Just absent sometimes. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her eyes suspiciously bright. We're going to do better, I promise. At school, things were slowly returning to normal. Some of the friends who had abandoned me during Mia's campaign tried to reconnect. Their tentative smiles and invitations met with cautious acceptance. I was wary but not closed off, unwilling to isolate myself completely. The school hallways gradually transformed back into ordinary spaces rather than gauntlets to be run, the stares and whispers fading as new dramas and gossip took center stage. Spring was in full bloom, the campus grounds dotted with flowering trees and fresh grass that seemed to mirror my own cautious renewal. Even the cafeteria, once a battlefield of social anxiety, became just a place to eat lunch again, the tension that had made every meal an ordeal finally dissipating. The experience had taught me to be more careful about who I trusted, but I didn't want to let Mia's toxicity poison my ability to form connections. Liam and I grew closer through it all, our shared experience creating a bond that felt different from my previous friendships. He'd seen me at my lowest and stayed anyway, his steadfast support never wavering. One afternoon as we walked home from school, his hand brushed against mine, the contact sending electricity up my arm. When I didn't pull away, he tentatively laced his fingers through mine, our palms fitting together perfectly. The street was lined with cherry trees in full bloom, pale pink petals occasionally drifting down around us as we walked. The simple act of holding hands felt monumental after weeks of anxiety and fear, a small step toward normal teenage experiences that had seemed impossible during the height of Mia's campaign. The warmth of his palm against mine was grounding, a physical reminder that I wasn't alone, that someone had seen the worst and still chosen to stay. Is this okay? He asked, his voice uncertain for the first time since I'd known him. I nodded, feeling a flutter in my chest that had nothing to do with anxiety for once, a warmth spreading through me that felt like healing. We were just turning onto my street when my phone buzzed with a notification. A new follow request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. The profile picture was blurry, but something about it seemed familiar, a chill running down my spine despite the warm day. The notification interrupted the perfect moment, reality intruding on what had felt like a scene from someone else's life. Someone normal, someone without a history of being targeted and manipulated. The screen of my phone glowed brightly in the afternoon sunlight, the anonymous profile icon staring up at me like an unwelcome reminder that the past wasn't as far behind me as I'd hoped. Do you think? I started, showing Liam the screen, unable to finish the thought. It could be nothing, he said, his thumb hovering over the block button. But block it anyway. Better safe than sorry. I did, but the momentary peace I'd felt shattered. Fragments of anxiety reassembling in my chest. Would I always be looking over my shoulder, wondering if Mia was finding new ways to reach me? The moment of connection with Liam remained, but now tinged with the shadow of what had happened, a reminder that healing wasn't linear. The street suddenly seemed less idyllic, the cherry blossoms less magical, as reality reasserted itself. Liam's hand remained in mine, a steady presence even as my thoughts scattered with renewed worry, his thumb tracing small circles on my palm, as if trying to physically anchor me to the present moment. rather than letting me drift back into fear. That night, I received an email from Elena, her name in my inbox sending my heart racing. "Thought you should know," she wrote. "Mia's been contacting people from her new location, telling them you made everything up. She's trying to rebuild her story from a distance." I forwarded the email to Liam, my hands shaking as I typed. When would this end? My bedroom felt suddenly less safe, the familiar space invaded by the knowledge that Mia was still actively working against me, even from miles away. The glow of my laptop screen illuminated my worried face as I read and reread Elena's warning, each word seeming to pulse with fresh threat. Outside my window, the neighborhood was quiet, houses dark except for the occasional lighted window, the ordinary scene at odds with the turmoil I felt inside. The next day, we decided to take all our evidence, including Elena's, to Mia's mother. It was a risk, but we hoped that seeing the full extent of her daughter's manipulation might convince her to get Mia the help she really needed. Mia's mother invited us in, looking tired and much older than I remembered, the stress of recent events etched into the lines around her eyes. We showed her everything, the messages, the recordings, the pattern of behavior documented over months. Mia's house looked different in daylight, smaller and more ordinary than it had seemed during my visits with Mia. The living room was neat, but showed signs of hasty packing, empty spaces on shelves where photos had been removed, a stack of flattened boxes leaning against one wall. Mia's mother served us tea in mismatched mugs, her hands slightly unsteady as she placed them on the coffee table between us. The evidence we presented seemed to physically weigh her down, her shoulders slumping further with each new revelation. "I knew she had problems," she said finally, her voice hollow as she stared at the evidence before her, "but I had no idea it went this far." She promised to share everything with Mia's therapist and her ex-husband, her shoulders slumping with the weight of it all. "She won't be coming back here," she assured us, "and I'll make sure she stays away from social media." As we left, I felt a weight lifting, the burden I'd been carrying finally shared. Maybe now it really was over. The chapter closing for good. The front door closed behind us with a soft click. The sound somehow final. The spring afternoon was bright and clear. The ordinary neighborhood scene, sprinklers watering lawns, a child riding a bicycle, a mail carrier making deliveries, creating a surreal contrast to the heavy conversation we'd just had. Liam and I walked in silence for several blocks, processing what had happened, the shared experience creating a bubble around us that separated us from the normal world continuing around us. The following week, I received a letter, an actual paper letter, from Mia, the handwritten address making my stomach clench. My first instinct was to throw it away unopened, but curiosity won out, my fingers carefully tearing the envelope. "I'm getting help," she'd written in her familiar looping handwriting. "Real help this time. I won't contact you again, but I wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. I'm sorry." The letter was written on plain white paper, 3 short paragraphs that somehow seemed more genuine than any of our previous interactions. The handwriting was less perfect than I remembered, slightly shaky in places as if written during an emotional moment. There were no elaborate explanations or excuses, just a simple acknowledgement and apology. The envelope had a postmark from a town I didn't recognize, hundreds of miles away, the physical distance between us now matching the emotional one. I showed the letter to Liam during lunch, the cafeteria noise providing a buffer of normalcy. "Do you think she means it?" I asked, watching his eyes scan the brief message. He shrugged, folding the letter and handing it back. "Maybe. People can change, but it's not your responsibility to find out." He was right. Whatever journey Mia was on now, it wasn't part of my story anymore. I had my own healing to do, my own path to follow. The cafeteria buzzed with ordinary teenage drama, who was dating whom, upcoming tests, weekend plans, the normalcy of it all, a reminder that life continued beyond the intense bubble of my experience with Mia. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, creating bright patches on the linoleum floor that shifted as clouds passed overhead. At a nearby table, a group of freshmen laughed over something on someone's phone, the sound of uncomplicated joy both foreign and familiar. As spring turned to summer, life settled into a new normal. I started therapy myself, working through the anxiety and trust issues that my experiences with both Awaf and Mia had left me with, each session helping me understand my patterns a little better. My parents made good on their promise to be more present, even organizing a family vacation for the first time in years, the 3 of us reconnecting over board games and shared meals. The therapy office became a safe space, its calm blue walls and comfortable chairs providing a container for the difficult emotions I was working through. My therapist, Dr. Chen, had a way of asking questions that made me see situations from new angles, helping me recognize the strength I'd shown throughout the ordeal, rather than focusing only on the victimization. At home, dinner became a regular family event rather than a solitary affair, the kitchen filling with the smells of cooking and the sounds of conversation as we relearned how to be present with each other. And Liam. Liam became more than just my defender. Our first kiss happened on a rainy afternoon as we sheltered under a store awning, waiting for the downpour to pass. It was awkward and perfect, and nothing like I'd imagined my first real relationship would be. Our noses bumping before our lips finally met. "You know," he said one day as we sat on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, "you never really needed me to protect you. You're stronger than you think." The kiss had been unexpected, a moment of normalcy amid the aftermath of chaos. Rain had pounded on the awning above us, creating a curtain of water that separated us from the rest of the world. Droplets clung to his eyelashes as he leaned in, hesitating just long enough for me to close the final distance between us. That moment on the porch came weeks later, the summer evening warm and peaceful, fireflies beginning to appear in the gathering dusk. The wooden steps were still warm from the day's heat, crickets creating a soundtrack to our conversation as darkness gradually claimed the neighborhood. I leaned against his shoulder, thinking about everything I'd survived, the betrayals and manipulations that had nearly broken me but somehow hadn't. "Maybe I am," I admitted, the words feeling true for the first time, "but I'm glad you were there anyway." The scars from Mia's manipulation would take time to fully heal, the trauma not something that disappeared overnight. I still flinched sometimes when my phone buzzed with an unknown notification, my heart racing until I confirmed it wasn't her. The physical sensations of anxiety remained, The sudden tightness in my chest when someone mentioned Mia's name, the way my hands would tremble slightly when I received a message request from an account I didn't recognize. Certain songs that reminded me of that time would make me change the station immediately, the associations too strong to ignore. Even walking past the coffee shop where we'd met Elena could trigger a flood of memories, my body remembering the stress before my mind could rationalize that the danger had passed. I was still cautious about new friendships, always watching for red flags I'd missed before, the lessons learned through pain not easily forgotten. But I was learning to trust my instincts again, to recognize the difference between real connections and toxic ones that only took without giving. And most importantly, I was learning that standing up for myself wasn't just about fighting back against people like Mia, it was about believing I deserved better in the first place, a lesson that would serve me long after high school drama faded into distant memory. The summer stretched ahead, full of ordinary teenage moments that now felt extraordinary after everything that had happened. Simple pleasures, swimming at the community pool, watching movies in Liam's basement, helping my mom plant flowers in our long-neglected garden, took on new significance. Each normal day was a victory, each moment of peace a reminder that I had survived and was slowly rebuilding. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, but for the first time in months, I was looking ahead rather than constantly glancing over my shoulder, the future once again something to anticipate rather than dread.